Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, on another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Glad to have you here. If you like what we're doing, please hit like and subscribe. It is a passive gesture that goes a very long way. If you are a returning listener, subscriber, or one of our very valued patrons, hell yeah! So glad to have you back. After the show tonight, as I promised, we'll be watching the 1986 cinema classic Thrashin', starring Josh Brolin. I know you guys are thinking, did anyone ever make a West Side Story with skateboards? Yep, someone did, and we're gonna watch it and laugh our asses off. So if you want to join us, there's a couple ways. Become a paid YouTube, stop laughing. Become a paid YouTube subscriber or become a patron. There's a link in the description to become a patron. Also, you can just hit join on YouTube and then you're in. Now, let's get to why you're here in the first place, to champion American exceptionalism. Whoa. Currently in Los Angeles, we're witnessing what for many is not a portrait of American greatness, but a live stream of authoritarian might. A small, peaceful protest pleading with ICE agents, many of whom are Latino themselves, to show grace to their undocumented fellow humans. These are not the hordes of felons we were told to fear when Trump stormed the campaign trail, stoking xenophobic panic about caravans of contemptible ne'er-do-wells bringing drugs and corruption. No, these are migrants showing up to immigration appointments in hopes of maintaining protected status, only to be violently arrested. From there, they're scattered across the globe into maximum security prisons, known for their inhumane cruelty. Many fled violent regimes that the U.S. either backed or helped install to maintain hegemonic control over the Western Hemisphere. In the Myth of American Idealism, Noam Chomsky and my guest today, Nathan J. Robinson, write, Hans Morgenthau, a founder of realist international relations theory, developed the standard view that the United States has a transcendent purpose, establishing peace and freedom not only at home, but also across the globe. As a scrupulous scholar, he recognized that the historical record is radically inconsistent with the transcendent purpose. But he insisted that we should not be misled by this discrepancy. What actually happened is merely the abuse of reality, unquote. But as the authors argue, because even oppressive criminal and genocidal governments cloak their atrocities in the language of virtue, none of this rhetoric should be taken seriously. Americans are not uniquely immune to self-delusion. With the current protests here in LA, we get a small glimpse of the same exceptionalism America exports far beyond its borders. Please welcome, as we discuss this with journalist, author, and left media pioneer. This episode is a long time in the works. Please welcome Nathan J. Robinson.
Oh my God.
How are you?
Hey, Jason. So nice to be here. What a hell of an intro that is. The music, the video clips. I've never seen anything like that. You know, Ben Burgess and I just have like elevator jazz. You've got like, I got my blood flowing. I'm ready. Thank God, bring some energy, and then you get the sounds. It's incredible.
Oh, there's so much.
You put on a show, man. This is the podcast. This is a show.
You know what? Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah.
Shout out. I want to thank you for just doing your magazine. It's a struggle to do a print magazine. I write sometimes for a magazine that tries to do print. You know, it is a struggle to actually make a physical magazine. I have a couple articles in Damage, and actually do a magazine that pays writers. My very meager stipend from Damage, which I really appreciate, is helping me through these trying financial times. I've only heard good things about people that have written for you. Actually, you've helped a very good friend of mine. I actually met him through your magazine, Bertrand Cooper.
Oh my God, Bertrand Cooper.
Yeah.
Incredible writer.
So he's gone off to New York Atlantic and New York Times.
Yeah. But first he was in current affairs.
Yeah, because of that article.
Before all that.
I reached out to him, and we've been, thick as thieves ever since.
Yeah. So he wrote this article. What was that? 2019.
It's like who gets to write for Black people.
It was who gets to create Black pop culture.
Yeah.
And basically, it was a class analysis of Black pop culture. It was really, really good. I mean, we just got lucky because Bertrand had tried to place that lots and lots of places, I think, if I recall correctly. And it'd been turned down because it just didn't fit anywhere. And so one of the things we love is we get to publish the stuff that doesn't fit in other places, but is really good. And so he came to us and we were just like, why haven't big magazines taken this? And then we were so lucky and we pounced on it. And then it became ours. And, and then everyone, of course, when it was published, immediately recognized Bertrand's formidable talent. And yeah.
he's a smart cookie, and I'm glad to know him as a friend. And I wouldn't have known him had it been not for your courage to print that article. So before we even get into your book and even what's going on in LA, just real briefly, tell me what was the impetus for you to say, you know what, I want to start a business that's pretty much dying, and I want to just get 10 toes deep in it and actually make a print edition and really guarantee that I'll be indebted forever.
Yeah, it was foolish. It was not a good idea. But we've been going 10 years now, so it wasn't completely foolish because it worked. It's worked. I mean, we're still here. I mean, we have no money, but we survive. But it was made much easier for me because Jacobin had done it 5 years previous. So, I mean, they were founded, they made this thing work, and I looked at that model. And that was the proof that. So you need to ask Bhaskar really why he thought that it could work, because I thought that it could work because their magazine had worked. So I thought, okay, well, it can be done. I really like print, and I had a blog at the time, but I was very unsatisfying, and I was like, I'd really like to do a magazine. So I made a prototype magazine. It looked real nice. People encouraged me. Some people didn't. Some people said, this is a disaster. Why are you pursuing this? You should focus on your studies and try to get a career. Why are you making little magazines? But, then we had a crowdfunding campaign, and our kind of thing just sort of snowballed over time. So it started as a tiny thing with a couple hundred subscribers, and then it just grew and grew and grew. And now we've got an office, and we've got five staff. We're just hiring our sixth full-time staff member. And so, I mean, I didn't have any illusions that print was going to be a bonanza, but the question was not, is it going to be lucrative? The question is, can it be done? Can it survive? And the economics of it actually work reasonably well if you keep your costs low. So if you don't have, there are a lot of places that have gone out of business, but oftentimes they've just been spending money in ridiculous ways. And we always kept it really, really tight. We didn't have an office for a while. I was the only full-time staff member for a while, and we just paid freelancers, and we tried to keep the print costs low. So eventually we just built up enough of a small community of subscribers to sustain it indefinitely.
How is it locally for you? Do people know who you are? Or you have kind of low key? I mean, I was telling you off air, I've spent a fair amount of time in your fair city. I definitely have some New Orleans questions for you at the end of the night.
I mean,
do you have a good circulation locally?
No. No, one of the interesting things is that we are in New Orleans, but we are not really a New Orleans magazine. Gotcha. I mean, pretty much every other publication in New Orleans is about New Orleans and is very plugged in. And we're not really that plugged into New Orleans at all. Which is kind of deliberate because I want New Orleans to have a national magazine with a national audience. And actually, I don't think we have any higher of a concentration of subscribers here than we do in any other city. I mean, we have subscribers here, but our subscriptions basically match the population distribution of the US. It's not like there's a big concentration of them in New Orleans.
Gotcha. I didn't know if you do any events there at all.
We've started. We actually have just done our first two open mic nights for writers because we want to get a little more plugged into the community, because there are a lot of great people here that we don't know any of them.
Yeah.
So we've done these evenings where people can just come along and read for 5 minutes, and that's gone really well.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Los Angeles. I live here in Baja. You know my neighbor, Ben Burgess.
I do indeed.
I convinced him to move down to Podcast Central, as we jokingly call it here in Mexico. It's just us. But people are watching ICE round up peaceful protesters, some of whom were simply some of the people they were arresting were simply attending routine immigration appointments. How does this moment reflect the gap you and Chomsky write about between America's supposed ideals and its actual behavior?
Well, I mean, what's always interesting to me about domestic, I mean, this book is about foreign policy, yes, but domestic authoritarianism follows the same kind of pattern that we lay out in the book, which is that there's all the rhetoric, and the rhetoric is freedom. The rhetoric is liberty. The rhetoric is security and peace. And then the reality on the ground is authoritarian brutality. And what's incredible to me, right, is that people like J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, who justify this, it's still incredible to me that you can do it in the name of small government and freedom. And you're building a police state. You're literally, you have these heavily armed police in the streets, brutalizing people, violating their civil liberties, attacking peaceful protesters, and yet somehow you can maintain that myth that you're doing it for idealistic reasons, that you're doing. I mean, they never say. This is what's extraordinary, and what we go through in the book is no one ever says, like, I'm building a police state. Yeah. Like, I'm building an authoritarian nightmare. I'm building a dystopia. I mean, they always say, like, I am creating security, prosperity for all, universal happiness. So it's remarkable, the contrast between the rhetoric and the on-the-ground reality. I mean, the level of dissonance there. And in foreign policy, of course, it's just completely wild, where we're just supporting the most brutal regimes in the name of democracy.
Yeah, especially in El Salvador, which has been very frightening that we're even seeing prisoners be shipped to El Salvador. How did you feel when you first saw that happening?
I mean, I try to maintain, one of the rules I have is to try and remain shocked, because it's so easy to lapse into not being shocked anymore and to say, like, well, what do you expect? In fact, there's a kind of guy, you might have had this kind of guy who replies online. This is what type of online reply guy who is Mr. What did you expect? When you like voice outrage, it's like, well, what did you expect? Did you? And I'm like, well, I didn't expect anything different, but it's still really, really disturbing to see. I mean, just the photos of all the all the guys being bent over and herded by these guards into, and in the prison in El Salvador, it's very clear, like, they don't have trials, they don't have charges, they're just being held there, according to Bukele, for the rest of their lives, because he's decided somehow through some opaque process that they're all terrorists. But I think what's so much more disturbing to me than, say, I'm glad Tony remains in a state of pissed off. That's very important. What's so much more disturbing even to me than seeing the images from the prison is when you see the reactions online from the people who support it, who are like, I have no sympathy, send a few hundred more of them, or this is a good start. That's the stuff that really makes me go, oh, I see how the Holocaust happened. Like, I see how a society of seemingly normal people can do Nazi-like things.
I mean, that's why I had the image of Charles Bronson behind you on the thumbnail, because
there you go.
For me, I don't know if you've watched the Death Wish movie.
I've never seen it. I mean, I know the premise, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've watched all 5.
Okay.
I'm a bit of a glutton. You and people like McManus read really shitty right-wing books, and I watch Death Wish movies. It's my difference. but I see the through line in the books you guys read, and then the Charles Bronson character that people have acted out in real life, right? We had Bernard Goetz in the early 80s in New York. They called him the vigilante killer, or he didn't kill anybody, but he shot three young men on a subway train. And when New York was like actually really violent in the 80s, and the young men weren't even trying to rob him. I think they asked him a question, and he shot him. But we can have that conversation another time.
But then Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you want to go a more modern route,
all the people celebrating, this guy who strangled a guy on the subway, and the guy who did the strangling is the folk hero.
I feel like there was a little more pushback. I think for this is my opinion.
Well,
I don't live in New York.
Yeah.
When I saw, and I can only go off what I'm seeing from my friends that live in the East Coast, it seemed like there was pushback on that guy. If you go back and watch news reports of the 1984 shooting, everyone, regardless of ethnicity, is saying, maybe if more people shot at little kids on the subway train, these little N-words wouldn't be robbing us. So that for me is the difference between 84 and now. I think there's a little bit more of a discussion. I think people are a little more alive. I think Jordan Neely, the optics on that played into media narratives that are going to give it to you every 5 minutes, right? A black man was strangled to death by a white guy because he's a black man. And you're going to get that over and over and over again, because the same week that happened on the other side of the country in San Francisco, a young homeless trans man was shot over a fight with a security guard in a CVS. And that didn't get the same play because it's two black people shooting each other. You can't really do the whole racial thing. And ultimately, I feel like nobody cares about poor people to a certain degree, unless you can fit in the racial narrative. Then they give a shit about you. But that's my dark view of the world. Your book opens by challenging the idea that the U.S. acts out of moral purpose on the world stage. Why do you think this myth of American benevolence has endured for so long, even in the face of overwhelming contradictory evidence?
Well, I mean, there's that's actually a question I haven't really confronted before, is like why we're documenting that it persists, but why does it not go away? Well, I mean, to one, it's that it has diminished a little bit. I mean, and you see that after incidents where the myth is really exposed to the U.S. public for what it is, it kind of disappears for a while. So we talk about the aftermath of the Vietnam War, where Americans really did become very cynical about their government. And the aftermath of Iraq has been the same. In fact, we have a far more receptive American audience for the story we're telling here than you would have had in 2002. So, I mean, the myth persists when it isn't exposed, right? So when the public isn't confronted with the facts, when they are just when the only information they've seen is propaganda stories. I interviewed a Vietnam veteran who's quoted in the book, Bill Earhart, who talks about the myths that he carried with him when he went to Vietnam. And he said he was raised on World War II movies. And he said, I thought that I was going to defend democracy. I had been told, I had watched all these Audie Murphy movies. I was going to Vietnam to stand up, to defend the Vietnamese, to defend their democracy against the tyrants who wanted to rule over them. And he says, I got there and I just I didn't understand what was going on, because I could not fit what I saw in front of me, which was a population that hated me, I couldn't fit that into the story, and I couldn't understand why we seemed to hate them too. It just none of it made sense, because this thing had been passed down to me, and I didn't have any contradictory information, and that had been kind of sealed off. I mean, so I think if you look at, for example, the Israel-Palestine conflict, when people are told simple stories, as they were for a long time, Israel, beacon of democracy in the Middle East, and that's all they see. They don't actually see things from the perspective of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. It becomes very easy to believe the mythology. And I think in the latest war on Gaza, we are seeing the mythology kind of crumble. You are seeing public opinion in the United States really turn sharply against Israel because it's no longer very easy to maintain the mythology in the face of all of the images and testimony that are actually making their way to people.
What do you think role media is playing in changing this perspective? I'm 47. Ever since I've been a conscious, Palestinians are supposed to be evil terrorists, right? The Cannon Film Group, the people that made a lot of those Death Wish movies, are from Israel, and or were. I think they both passed on, and they did make a lot of pro-Israeli, anti-Palestinian propaganda in a lot of the films they made in the early 80s. And now we have this media landscape that's just fractured. You're not getting your news from ABC at 8 p.m. anymore. People are getting it from all these different independent people like me, like you, and all of our friends, and even people on certain aspects of the right are even calling out the atrocities that Israel is committing, and we're seeing it live streamed. What role is that playing in people going, well, maybe what we've been told isn't 100% the truth?
I think it's huge. I mean, one of the reasons that I got into media, I mean, I went to law school and I went to grad school. First, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I thought I wanted to be a professor. And then I realized that, if you want to alter what, if you really are passionate about changing what people do in the world, changing the information that they receive is critical to that. I mean, media came to loom so large for me in the process of altering society, because media mediates, right? Media is the thing standing between you and the entire world. It's the barrier. So whatever comes through, that membrane, whatever permeates, that's your perception of the world. If it doesn't get to you, you're not going to know anything. The only things you know about Palestine, unless you've been to Palestine, are going to come through some form of media, or, if you meet a Palestinian, they might tell you something. But if you don't meet a Palestinian, as a lot of Americans are going to meet Palestinians, then the only way you're ever going to find out the truth about the conflict is if someone gives you a book, if you see a video clip, if you turn on Democracy Now!, if you turn on This Is Revolution, if you turn on the Current Affairs podcast. These are the only ways you're actually going to find anything out. So to me, it seems pretty obvious that what you're describing there, that change where media has kind of opened up, has been hugely important to people's perception of the conflict changing.
And I remember last time I was in New Orleans, actually, I went to a cool little Palestinian market. I couldn't tell you what part of town I was in. I do not remember. It was 2019. Whether it's ICE in 2024 or coups in Latin America decades ago, there's a continuity in how violence is rationalized as virtue. What do you think allows Americans to accept or ignore this contradiction?
I mean, because one of the ways this is done is to portray violence as a tragic necessity, right? Nobody likes violence, but we have to do it, and we understand that violence is regrettable and bad, and it's a terrible weight on us. You actually hear this a lot in Israeli narratives. There's this famous image of crying and shooting, right? Which is like, we don't want to do that. Or Golda Meir had the quote about how the Arabs make us kill their children. We don't want to, but they make us do it. And actually, I was just looking today because Tulsi Gabbard said something about Hiroshima that suggested that the Hiroshima bombing was a very bad and tragic thing, right? And there are all these right-wingers saying, how dare she? Don't they understand that we stopped Japanese fascism with the Hiroshima bombing, and the Hiroshima bombing was a deeply moral act. Now, I mean, the Hiroshima bombing, right? One of 2 times that a nuclear weapon has been dropped on a civilian population, the other time being Nagasaki. Both times the United States, the country that cares about the international law and the rule of law and morality and democracy, and with all these humane principles and values, we're the only country that's done the most unthinkable possible atrocity, which is to drop nuclear weapons on civilian populations. And if you look at those cases, I mean, the justifications are simply the ends justify the means, and our ends are good, and because our ends are good, our horrendous means can be justified, and the better the ends are, the more you can justify hideous means. So, in some ways, the very purity and idealism of the end is what makes the extremely atrocious means so justifiable, right? Because it's like, well, we're doing this because we are trying to create something incredible, because we are exceptional, because we are more moral, because we're the most moral army, on earth. If you're Israel, or if you're we're the people who defeated the Nazis, we have this kind of special license. And so, we are not like them. Our enemies are deeply evil and cruel people, but we are not like them. So when we inflict, really heinous damage, oftentimes at a scale far greater, right? The number of people who were killed in Iraq is so much greater than the number of people who died in the World Trade Center attacks. Yeah. But because we are pursuing a just and good end, and Osama bin Laden was pursuing a foul and evil end, we can justify that massively increased death toll.
Do you think Americans treat it differently? And this is saying a lot, because one of the biggest protests, I think it's the biggest protest in history, is the anti-war protests of the early 2000s, 2003, I believe. Do you think Americans respond differently if they're seeing footage like we're seeing now with Gaza? Like, what I mean by that is actually seeing civilians get hit with these big fragmentation bombs and taking out schools, because we weren't really getting numbers like we're getting now.
No, and we actually have a quote from, gosh, I forget if it's a CNN or MSNBC reporter in our chapter on the media, where we talk about who said openly, in the case of the Iraq war, like, we were not showing you the real war. We were showing you the weapons when they went off, but we weren't showing you them when they landed, right? And when they land, they tear people to pieces, and they leave just the most gruesome scenes imaginable. And literally, a decision was made that we're showing a puff of smoke. And she said, well, it's not a puff of smoke. The puff of smoke is what happens when you fire it. It's not what happens when it hits someone. And I do think that has an effect. I mean, the Iraq war, despite having the largest protest in history, I seem to remember public opinion was on the side of the war at the moment it was waged, until it and didn't start to reverse until the war started going badly for the United States. And so if you look at the Gulf War, public opinion was very pro Gulf War, because again, the casualties weren't seen and weren't discussed. And so I do think excluding the hideous reality of what these wars have meant for the people on the receiving end of U.S. violence is definitely a huge part of what keeps Americans supportive of their governments. And the Vietnam War, I mean, it was when images of horrible Vietnamese suffering, the napalm girl walking out of the village, when that sort of stuff started to get through because the American public are not monsters. They're not, horrible people. They all this stuff does have to be concealed from them in order to maintain their support.
The draft also helped with
Yes, that's true.
anti-war sentiments, especially in working class parts of the country where people were seeing their children either come back in body bags or just come back different young men, damaged young men. There hasn't been a draft.
Right.
Do you think this is the administration that maybe has a draft again? And if so, is that the nail in the coffin for this administration?
I can't see it. I mean, it kind of depends, right? I mean, Trump, interestingly, like Trump grasps. I did an article back in the 2024 campaign called What Trump Understands About War. And Donald Trump understands pretty well that like a bad war can really kill a presidency. Like he gets that George W. Bush was made very unpopular by the Iraq War. He understands that the Vietnam War finished Lyndon Johnson's presidency. He knows that he doesn't want to get involved, which is why he's constantly talking. I mean, his speech to the his Middle East speech, where he was talking about, we're not going to get involved in this region anymore. We're going to leave it alone. We're going to come home. We don't want any foreign wars. So I think Trump understands what you're saying there, which is that a draft would be hugely, especially for a very controversial war, would be pretty unpopular and would not be a good move politically. So I don't see it. I mean, it's not going to happen in the near future, but when a war breaks out, everything kind of changes. I mean, I was just reading about, the period after Pearl Harbor, where all of a sudden, like overnight, the entire American population is transformed into rabid anti-Japanese, like, braying for blood. Like, when are we going to go exterminate the Japanese? People who had almost no opinions on Japan before, one incident touches off a war and all of a sudden everything has shifted. So who knows what could happen if you have some kind of terror attack or some kind of big incident.
From education and journalism, what roles do media and academia play in manufacturing consent for this idealist mythology, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, we, as I say, we have a whole chapter on media in the book, and the reason it's a little difficult to answer is because, as you've mentioned, media is changing, and it's opening up. I mean, a lot of Chomsky's analysis of manufacturing consent was developed at the time when Americans all got their news from the same places, and then you could see the dynamic very, very obviously, which was that media limited the spectrum of debate. And so even on something like the Vietnam War, there was a spectrum of debate that ran from, we should have escalated the war. We capitulated because we should have doubled down and beat the communists, to, well, it was right to withdraw, but that's because the war was strategically unwise and unwinnable. But what Chomsky pointed out was that, absent in this spectrum was any room for the case that the war was just deeply immoral, not just unwinnable. And Chomsky pointed out that, you could have been a Nazi general and made the case to Hitler that the war against Russia was unwinnable. But those are like strategic disputes that assume the validity of the underlying enterprise. And so Chomsky has this vast body of work showing how all of the media outlets tend to assume the validity of the underlying enterprise of U.S. aggressive warfare around the world. And so you can show pretty clearly how mainstream media does that. You could show the kind of buried assumptions in the newspaper, the things that are not questioned, the sources that are taken seriously versus those that are dismissed. You can see this in the New York Times in the lead up to the Iraq War, where government sources saying that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction are taken very seriously, and anti-war voices are basically kept out. And we cite statistics on the number of anti-war voices who were on cable news, which is almost none. So you can show what the media does. Now, what the role is. This is I went on Daniel Bester's foreign policy podcast. We have a kind of argument about this because, the question is, well, how much does it actually make a difference, right? How much does the media succeed in shaping public perceptions? Because that's much more complicated, because one of the things we show is that people don't tend to believe and they believe it less and less. Like, public trust in media has gone down and down and down. And one of the things that we show is that Americans are very skeptical of government conduct. So, I think the media has. I think it's undeniable that in a situation where the media is the source, where these institutions are the source of people's understanding of the world, the biases and the assumptions that those institutions have are going to shape the public understanding. But we are in a changing situation where, as people trust those less and less, it matters less and less whether they have biases and assumptions, because we're in a situation right now where people tend to believe whatever the last TikTok videos they saw was.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. We've had Bessner on the show several times. We actually did a live thing with Danny a few years ago in LA, Ben and I. Post-truth society and the death of mass politics are two things that we talk about on this show quite a bit. How does that help or hurt trying to expose the manufacturing of consent?
Yeah. Well, it's really double-edged, because as I've mentioned, on the one hand, it was really fortunate that we started our magazine in a landscape where independent media could flourish. So that's been great. On the other hand, in a situation where nobody trusts anything, I do a lot of debunking right-wing arguments, and I just wrote an article about Stephen Miller and the way he constructs his propaganda. And one of the frustrating things there was, like, I'm used to writing articles where I say, okay, well, these are the statistics that Charles Murray cites, and these are why they're not correct, and blah, blah, blah. But Stephen Miller was interesting because he would just say things that are so absurd that you think, well, anyone who could possibly be persuaded by him is not interested in thinking, right? So he says, like, the judges are all Marxists. Okay, well, like, you and I are leftists. Like, we know that United States federal judges are not Marxists.
There's not even a traffic court judge.
No, is there a single judge at any level? Is there anyone in the judiciary that is a Marxist in all of the United States? No. But he just says it. Marxist communist judges. That's what he says. And there you think, okay, like, I don't know how I could ever even speak to someone who believes that, right? Because, like, if you believe that, then you believe it just because Stephen Miller said it. Like, you clearly don't believe it because there's any evidence for it. Like, you've just been told it by your MAGA leaders. And so I don't even know where to begin with, like, trying to guide someone towards a true and accurate understanding of reality if they think that, like, the U.S. federal judiciary is populated by communists.
It happens to me, maybe Ben a little bit. Maybe when we're together, it definitely happens to us when we're together, where we'll be somewhere. And it's not like we have shirts on that say, like, hey, we're from the left and ask us a dumb fucking question. But I was like, you would think we have
that shirt now.
I remember I was sitting there's a bar that we go to watch games at here in Rosarito. And I was there by myself and watching games. There's a fellow there, and he's talking, and he's definitely a Trump guy, but he's got a Latin wife. He's got a wife from Costa Rica. He's actually helping someone else get their paperwork in the States. And I think that's the disconnect a lot of people have, because not a lot of people are going to talk to MAGA people. Again, I live in a tourist place. A lot of Americans think that Mexico is like, hey, I want to go to Hawaii on a budget, so I'll just come shit on this country. So this guy is talking about being in Costa Rica, and he's like, well, you know, Costa Rica's communist. And I was like, no, it's not. I said, just like that. I said, no, it's not. And he goes, I've been there. I was like, sure, but it's not. And he goes, no, you don't understand. I was like, no, I do. I totally do. That's what's so funny. I do. And he goes, no, it's communist. I said, well, tell me what communism is. And then he just got quiet.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it's. You don't have to try to fucking get mad at people and just ask. Hey, tell me.
Just ask some basic questions. Yeah. What does that word mean to you?
Yeah. And it's not like me and this guy got in an argument.
No,
I wasn't mad.
You know what? You're doing it like Socrates did, which is to just the Socrates method was to just go around and go like, what do you mean by that word?
Yeah.
And then it turns out that nobody knows what the words that they're using even mean. And it was so annoying, and it exposed them so quickly that they murdered him.
So maybe I should keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
And try the arguing online method. Like, I don't want to argue with it. I don't post a lot of.
You don't argue. You just go. Could you define communism, please?
Yeah, just do it.
Murder you.
Yeah, like he goes, well, the hospital was run by the state. I was like, okay, like we have that in the States.
Hey, what's the fire department?
Yeah. and then, well, I'm not going to argue with you about that. You got me there. Like, okay, well, I'm not trying to get you, brother. Let's just watch this fucking game and have a good time. But that happens like way more, and I don't know. Again, I don't know what it is about me that people want to say. You know what? I really hate BLM. I'm like, wow. Good morning to you too. Sir. You and Chomsky write that even genocidal regimes use the language of morality. How do we push people, especially liberals or centrists? Yeah. To recognize their own government doing the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so I think we open the book on the first or second page with some of the rhetoric from Japan and World War II and Nazi Germany. Yeah, we use Heinrich Himmler saying that the extermination of the Jews was only carried out for the love of our people, and we suffered no defect in our character. And Hitler said in Czechoslovakia he was just trying to further the peace and social welfare of all by eliminating ethnic conflicts. And we say the worst of history's criminals have often proclaimed themselves to be among humankind's great heroes. As I mentioned earlier, nobody says I'm building a police state. Nobody ever says that. I think that a lot of people don't even think they're building a police state when they're building a police state, right? They think they're taking temporary measures to ensure security and preserve order against the tide of lawlessness. And then when you notice that all of the worst regimes use this kind of rhetoric, the first thing you realize is, well, we have to be on guard, because if we are the bad guys in a situation, we're not going to know very easily just by looking at, if we can easily be fooled by our justifications. I mean, if everyone is using this same kind of rhetoric, then what you have to examine is the facts. It's not enough to have noble ideas, to believe, that you're doing good things and helping the world and you're not a bad person, because all of the worst people believe that they're not bad people. They believe they're great people. So belief that you're a great person and doing well is not any guarantee that you are. What you have to do is you have to look at the conduct, and you have to say, what is it that we've done in the world? What are the consequences of what we've done? And so that's why this book is in many ways just a massive compendium of all of the actual facts about things the United States has done and the consequences for people on the ground. We say, well, forget everything that presidents have ever said. Mm-hmm. And let's look at who was on the receiving end of the bombs and what happened to them, and then we go around the world and show all of the things that this country has done and the way and all of the lives that it has totally shattered and destroyed. And we say, well, how can you possibly maintain this idealistic rhetoric when you look at the mountain of corpses?
Do you think part of the problem is that American identity itself is built on exceptionalism?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. I mean, it's such an arrogance, right? It's so dangerous to be that arrogant, to love yourself that much. You know, you shouldn't love yourself too much. Like people who think they're great, they are terrible. Like all of the people I know who are the best people are modest and humble people. And I think it is fair to say that the same principle applies to countries too. Like if you think you're the best country in the world, you are probably too arrogant. You are too conceited. You are too blind to your own flaws. So yes, I think that the American national story, just like I think the Israeli national story, and just as the British national story. So I'm originally from Britain, and I did an article fairly recently at Current Affairs about the British Empire. And, you know, all of the stories that Britain told itself about, you know, it's how unique British civilization was, and how pure and moral, and how different its empire was from all the other empires, right? All the other empires, they're about conquest, they're selfish, but we're the benevolent empire. We're genuinely trying to civilize people. We're genuinely trying to help people by conquering them and ruling over them. And so, you know, we're trying to help them no matter what they have to say about it, no matter what they think of the enterprise. And that kind of story, I mean, Chomsky always points out that John Stuart Mill was probably like the most morally enlightened person in, you know, mid 19th century Britain, right? He was a deep and serious moral thinker. He was actually very sympathetic to socialism. And yet when he talked about the British Empire, he would say like, oh, Britain is an angelic country. We differ from all the other empires in that we are just trying to help people. You know, these barbarous, backward people, we're trying to bring them up to a standard of basic civilization. And so, you know, when you start telling self-adulatory stories, that's when you really got to watch out.
Do you think it helps that Americans have this ability to kind of go anywhere in the world without problem? Like, I mean, even me, it wasn't difficult to move down here at all. And recently, you know, sometimes I'll see these things on my YouTube feed and people will be like, I live in Mexico and this is what a gym looks like in Mexico. And I'm like, I don't know where the fuck you are, but we have gyms look pretty normal. And there was someone that did a video and there's like, this is why I'm leaving Mexico. And the first thing this person said was, I'm tired of paying the "you're a gringo" tax. Meaning like, you know, it's real. It is a real thing. There's these things called the tianguis here, which are like these massive flea markets, massive fucking flea markets, right?
Yeah.
And they're badass. There's food. There's all kind of cheap shit that I love. And I saw this cardigan sweater and I wanted it so I could sit on my terrace and look like a writer in this cardigan.
Yeah.
Right. And usually this stuff is like 25, 30 pesos. And there's no price on anything. And it's just a pile of clothes. Right.
Yeah.
I grab the cardigan. I look for the dude who's selling the stuff and I hold it up. He doesn't even look at the item. He looks at me, straight at me, looks me up and down. He goes, 100 pesos. Right? That's a real thing. The gringo tax is a real thing. I understand that I'm going to have to pay it because I understand.
I would charge it
in this country.
if I was Mexican and Americans came over and I knew they had money. I would get every penny out of them.
Yeah. And this person's like, I'm tired of this. I was like, there's something about being American where you think everywhere you go has to be America. Like, you know, it's an imaginary line that separates me and my friends in San Diego, right? But it's a different world down here.
Yeah.
You know, everything is not just the language, you know, the way I pay my bills, the way the house is built. Like, this is all, I'm still figuring it out and I'm 4 years here. And I think there's something about being American where you're just so arrogant to anyone else's plight, and it never crosses your mind that this is what it's like to live in the shadow of empire.
But that is all empires, right? I mean, as I say, like the British were just as arrogant, right? The white man's burden, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and the British thought like, they should just build England everywhere they went, right? They should teach the natives to speak in perfect British accents. The more people were like the English, the better off they were, right? I mean, it's even more arrogant. I mean, the French were the same. French imperialism was precisely the same. I mean, this is the arrogance of power, right? I mean, when you are powerful, it is very difficult to see things from the perspective of those you are crushing under your boot, and I think this tends to happen with powerful countries.
Yeah.
We're not unique. I mean, one of the things that Chomsky's often criticized for, totally wrongly, is like singling out the United States.
Yeah.
But he doesn't, and he's always been critical of. He's critical of Modi. He was critical of Bolsonaro. He was critical of the Turkish government. He's critical of Britain and France. Right? I mean, he's vicious, vicious man. But you got to be careful, because it isn't some unique pathology that comes with being American. It is in part because the United States is the global hegemon, that these pathologies are so exaggerated, so extreme.
What was it like to write the book with Chomsky?
Well, it's the best writing experience of my life. I mean, it was incredible, because I couldn't believe it happened. I mean, it ended in a very sad way, because he had a stroke. We were about 2/3 of the way through the manuscript, and he had this major stroke, and he's been unable to communicate ever since. So I had to finish it up on my own. But up until that time, when we were sending drafts back and forth, and I was trying to help him. Like, my role in this was to help him kind of formulate a really clear and powerful summary of the ideas that he had spent 60 years expressing. I mean, he's currently 94, 95. And, I wanted to help him organize his thoughts and help him, tighten them up and update them for 2022, 2023, when we were writing this. And, that was incredible for me, because it was not just getting to work with someone who was, who really formed my own political worldview, but it was also feeling like I actually had something to contribute. Was kind of incredible, because he brought all the depth of knowledge and all the research and all of the the 100 pages of endnotes are all things that he found over the course of his career. But I was able to bring, as an editor and as someone who writes for a popular audience, I think I was able to help him produce I believe this is the most accessible, readable Chomsky book that he's ever put out. And so that was pretty gratifying.
Agreed. Closing reflections. For people who still cling to the idea that the U.S. is a flawed but ultimately well-intentioned, what do you say to that?
I say intentions don't really matter very much. I mean, this is one of the core points that comes out of Chomsky, is that one of the defenses has always been, but we mean so well. And one of the things that Chomsky's always argued is that, yeah, but you don't measure how good someone is by what they mean to do. You measure it by what they do. It may be that the Emperor of Japan was genuinely trying to bring prosperity to Asia by colonizing it. But it doesn't matter. Maybe Mao didn't intend to cause starvation, but we still judge him for it. We judge other regimes by what they do, not how good and pure their intentions are. We don't judge Putin by what his intentions are. We don't care what his intentions are. We don't care if he thinks it would be better for Russia and Ukraine to be, to be one state. We don't care. We just look at the consequences for people. So we should judge ourselves the way we judge others. And when we judge others, we don't look at what the purity of their heart. we look at the deeds they commit. And when you start to apply that framework to the United States, I mean, really, you get a very, very ugly picture of your country.
That's a good answer. I didn't know what you were going to say.
Well, that's his answer. You know, I'm just paraphrasing. I'm just stealing everything from my co-author.
Okay, I have some lightning round questions for you.
Oh God, I hated lightning round. Fuck this up.
I based them in New Orleans.
What?
Yeah, gumbo or etouffee?
I guess gumbo. I don't really eat either because it's all full of meat here.
Are you a vegetarian?
Yeah. I like basically starved to death here. Thank you. Perfect noise. Perfect use of the one.
You having an unnatural allegiance to losers does not like it.
Wow. How dare you?
I'm sorry.
Come on this show.
Oh God.
With your meatless mouth.
I didn't bring this up.
So you don't even eat vegetarian gumbo?
I mean, I'll eat vegetarian gumbo. There's just not that much of it.
I feel like there's enough of a hipster scene in
New Orleans. There is. You could go find a vegan. There are some good vegan New Orleans food places.
Is there vegan po' boys?
There are vegan po' boys.
Do you eat what is the best place in the quarter for a vegan po' boy?
Oh, there's literally a place. What is its name? I'm gonna forget the name of this place. Oh God, there's a vegan soul food place that's pretty good on Decatur Street, and I've forgotten entirely the name of it.
Is it run by white people from New York?
No, it is not run by white people from New York. Actually, it is run by black people from New Orleans, which is why it's worth going to.
Tell them there's a black person in California shaking his head.
I wouldn't go to it if it weren't.
Oh, you wouldn't go if it was white people?
Well, if it was not good, I wouldn't be. Oh, Two Fat Vegans with a PH. That's what it's called. Two Fat Vegans.
The picture in my head is of you walking in and just seeing white people
just go,
and just leaving like, oh, fuck this.
Sorry. I'm gonna just go next door. I'm not feeling very hungry.
Like, I didn't know you fucking gentrification.
Okay, this is not a particularly swift lightning round, Jason.
No, it's not. I'm bad at being swift.
This is
that's what she said. Donut or beignet?
Oh, beignet.
Be honest.
Beignet. I lived a block from Cafe Du Monde for the first 5 years here, so I had a lot of like midnight beignets.
Is it overrated? Yay or nay? Cafe Du Monde.
Yes, it's overrated. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I can't ask you the last question because it's also meat related, and you would know if Popeyes in New Orleans is spicier than anywhere else.
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Damn it!
Would have told you this stuff beforehand if you.
Nah, I wasn't gonna. Well, I meant to send you the questions before. That was a me fuck up.
Prep me.
But the lightning round has been a fun. I just started doing it recently, and it's been a lot of fun to just fuck with.
Yeah, you've successfully exposed what a bad New Orleanian I am.
Like I said, that area has changed quite a bit, and I would not be surprised if there were several vegan eateries.
No, there are. It's gotten better.
I'll find out where my friends work down there, and I'll let you know.
Please do.
Thank you very much. Wherever you guys are watching or listening to the show, there's links in the description. First line to the book.
The book is out in paperback this month. So
fuck yeah,
it's like half the price. You guys pick one.
What else are you working on?
I'm working on a book about J.D. Vance. Because I went to law school with him. So
did you really?
Yeah.
Like, so you knew him in real life? I
didn't really know him, but we were just there, and but I did watch his rise from the very beginning. So my publisher asked me if I'd write a book on him, and I agreed because there is no book on him. So, doing the first one.
Somebody says, "I hope it's a bestseller."
We'll see. I gotta. One of these days, I'm gonna write a book that sells some copies because I haven't successfully done that yet. I need a book that's actually gonna sell so it can fund current affairs.
Well, we've had some writers on here that have had the best-selling book in their category where they've been like super specific.
Yeah, I get that too. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I had like #1 in history and theory of democratic socialism for 2 weeks.
yeah, and you're like,
Why you should be a socialist.
yeah, let's go to 7. Like, yeah, 7, bitch. Say something.
Amazon does that just so every author gets to be #1 at something. You get
They treat you guys like kindergartner.
little participation. Well, you're #1 in this category, and that makes you very, very special.
Someone emailed me. They said you're on our list of the top 10 podcasts about revolution. And my first thought was,
like, I hope
bullshit.
so.
Yeah, I was like, that's bullshit. And then I looked at the list, and it was like mostly right-wing shows.
Oh, okay.
I was like,
God.
This explains why I'm getting all these interview requests from people that were like, he was at January 6th. He'd be great for your show.
Oh, yeah. The PR emails are always fun when they.
Yeah, I never block them. I want to read them all. Nathan, again, thank you so much for your time.
I'm so glad we finally got to do this. I've wanted to for a while, and I feel like I failed you and disappointed you.
Well,
I feel like you tried to set it up, and I was bad at it.
Now you know what goes on here.
Oh, it's incredible. And this is the best with the sound effects and that intro. My God, Jesus.
Now
Well, I hope you come back to New Orleans sometime, Jason.
I want to go back, dude. That was one of the fun shows of that tour. Like I said, some of my best friends on the planet live in that city. I've spent too much time with artists there in Jackson Square hanging out. So
and I hope you enjoy the 1986 cult classic skater film Thrashing.
We are hella gonna enjoy Thrashing.
Okay.
Nate, have a good night.
I'll see you. Bye, man.
That was Nathan Robinson. The show is a long time in the works, so I'm glad I finally got to do it. I really appreciate the work that Nathan does. Nathan gets his nose in there. He's always debating someone, writing some article about a right winger. There's like a handful of guys that do that. Ben definitely Matt McManus and Nathan Robinson. New Orleans vegan. I wanted to ask your super chat question, Dizzle, but I was scared. I'm not gonna lie. Scared. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. Because I was like, I don't know. We went off such a deep end. Was that last year, a couple years ago, when we started literally asking the guests about the hose? And I can't remember who we asked that to. They just looked at us like, what the fuck are you talking about? The hose? Was that Jack Rasmus? Because people, they get scared to come on here. There's some PR companies that still fuck with me, maybe mostly the book publishers, because I will read the book and I think they enjoy the interview. So I still got the book publishers, but I'll say this on the main show before I go. Last year, early this year, there's a few actors PR people and rappers PR people that were contacting us. And I was getting back to them and sent them a clip of the show. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have just booked it and kept my mouth shut. And this guy is like a pretty decent sized actor. He's got some show that's on Amazon, black guy. And I think they were just looking for like black people. Like, just Google like niggas with podcasts. And I'm sure I came up like, eh. And they were like, this will be fine. And no. They were like, we cannot ruin this man's reputation fucking with you people. So yeah, thank you, Charles. Christian Parenti did not have a sense of humor when Toussaint did her landlord acknowledgement. That's fucking funny. You sit here, you try to write good bits. That was a good bit. But I think people are so used to like going on boring shows or people are trying to be so fucking serious all the time. And you're like, wait a minute, you guys aren't, well, we're serious, but you know, we're also fucking funny. So the Toussaint landlord acknowledgement might be one of her better bits. That didn't sound right, but you know what I mean. Well, look, let's go watch. I'll give you guys some time to get your popcorn ready. Let's go watch the 1986 skateboarding classic, Thrashin'. And if you are listening to this show later and you're like, that sounds like fun, I want to watch this thing with them and talk shit with the movie with them. Maybe you miss out, but you want to see the shit talk in the movie watch that we did. Become a patron. I put the movie up with the whole conversation. You get it all the interruptions, all the pauses, all the jokes. You get it all. And this is going to be a good one because Kushlik is here and he's been dying for the skateboard joust scene. He wants to see how it happens. How do two rival skaters, one from the valley, one from the not valley, because he didn't really live in downtown, just didn't live in the valley. But how can these two rival skating cliques, what brings them to the point of combat? By skateboard jousting. It's insane. It is insane. So someone says one probably call the other poser. I wish. But no, this is like West Side Story, Romeo Juliet with skateboards, and it's in the 1986. But all your favorite skaters are in it. Tony Hawk, Christian Soy, Tony Alva has a big role. I think he has a speaking role. Great movie. By great, I mean entertaining for us. So on that note, I'll see you guys in a little bit. We are out.